Welcome into the PFF NFL show. Steve Palazzolo here with Sam Monson. How you doing, buddy?
Good. How are you, Steve?
I'm wonderful.
Excellent.
It's the offseason, man. We've got a little bit less stress, I think, every day at the office, trying to crank through all of our draft work. Don't tell anyone. Don't let anyone know. It's a little bit less stressful for us before they pile the work back on our plates.
Is it?
Is it, though?
No.
Maybe it's not. We're always looking forward, though. More planning. We've got more content coming up on the site. For the next few weeks, though, this is where we get to have a little bit of fun, right? We get to have, write some things that maybe we didn't have time to write during the season, some bigger picture looks. We're going to have some teaching tapes type of stuff, learning about PFF grades, whatever it might be. So there's a lot of good stuff from a content standpoint, and we'll be duplicating that on the podcast, walking you guys through it. So this week, going up on the site, we did our top 25 list of players under 25 years old, which is a pretty common piece of content for a lot of people around the interwebs. But I think ours always comes with a little bit unique angle with the PFF grades behind it. And even though the PFF grades are behind it, it's not as simple as this automated list. We debated this thing heavily. This thing took on many iterations before we got the final list completed.
It always comes back to this idea that we're the only place out there that has watched and graded every single snap of every one of these players. And, it came up the other day when, hang on a second, I'm going to have to cough. I'm going to deploy the cough button, Steve. Fill the silence.
This is not professional by Sam at all, but he's going to cough. We have a cough button. Hopefully you didn't hear it that much. If you're watching on YouTube, you saw it. You actually saw Sam's cough.
You saw magic happen.
Yeah.
So I don't want
professional here.
This is beautiful. I mean, this is how the pros do it, Steve. We're inching ever closer to the professionalism.
Scratching the surface even.
Yeah. So Daniel Jeremiah, NFL Network guy, tweeted during the week that one of his favorite things after the draft is to go and watch the top 5 guys at each position in the NFL. Kind of recalibrate yourself when it comes to draft scouting.
Which is
get
a
an
smart
idea,
move. Yeah.
Get an idea of what elite looks like at the NFL level, which I think is a really good idea. It's actually a really smart thing. My question, which I didn't actually ask him, but how do you know who the top 5 guys are?
Right.
Like, where are you getting that from? It's a great idea, but if your main thing is the college guys trying to get how these guys are going to translate to the next level, when you go to reset, how do you figure out who the top 5 guys to watch are? Some of them are going to be obvious. Obviously, Brady, Drew Brees, these guys are clear top 5 quarterbacks, but how do you pull out the 5th best linebacker in the league, the 5th best running back? You need some way of calibrating who you're going to look at in the first place. And I'm not using this to call out Daniel Jeremiah, but to illustrate this is where PFF, where the main strength is in our stuff, is that even if you don't agree with us on an individual play level or an individual player level, the whole point is this system has been devised for years. It's been improved. It's had NFL input. It's had coaches, GMs, players, all these kind of guys start shaping this thing. It's now, how long is that analysis guide? Like a 250-page book? It's this giant tome of knowledge and a system that grades all these guys. And even if you don't agree with the specific play-by-play grading, the point is it's applied universally to everybody. So we are the only place out there that is applying the same individual system to every single player in the NFL and being able to at least compare apples to apples. So anybody else out there, they may go through a guy and go through every single snap of his play and say, well, I think he's better than PFF thinks he is. I'm like, okay, but now how does he compare to the other 200 players at his position in the league?
Right.
If you haven't gone through and done the same thing with them, you don't know.
Well, so this was actually one of my favorite things to do when scouting college prospects. DeForest Buckner is a guy that comes to mind, and he's going to be on our list here in a minute. When he was coming out of Oregon, the first guy that came to mind was Calais Campbell, in part because of size and because of where they won and where they lost and how they played with high pad level every now and again. And for me to actually compare that, I could fire up a Calais Campbell playlist because when we're scouting these guys, we have the benefit of the PFF grading also pointing us to the right plays through the video and say, okay, let's watch all of Buckner's pressures. Let's all watch all of his losses. Let's watch all the good and the bad and the important plays. And we can get through a season's worth of analysis watching Buckner, not just let's just pick 4 random games like most scouts will do. So I watched Buckner, and then I just created a Calais Campbell playlist of his positives and negative plays, and it actually confirmed my comparison of those two guys. It was like, oh, wow, they win similarly and they lose similarly, and there was a lot of benefit, I think, just having this massive data set to tap into and actually be able to make some like-for-like comparison. So certainly a benefit that we have.
And despite that, despite having all of that data, all of the snaps in the books, we still spent the majority of yesterday arguing about this list.
We did. So let's just manufacture some arguments again, Sam.
We don't have to manufacture. We'll argue on this list.
I'll
still.
explain why Myles
Number
Garrett
one and
needs to be
number two
3.
were about the only two we agreed on.
Can we set the rules real quick first?
Okay.
So we're going back. This isn't necessarily value-based as far as position, because, again, if it was value-based, it'd be quarterbacks, corners, edge defenders, everyone else.
And you know that Steve wanted to just have a list of quarterbacks because that's,
There's only a handful of quarterbacks under 25 that could have made this list.
All of whom would have been in the top 5 if it was left to you.
Yeah, true. So it's not value-based. All positions created equal, essentially, other than maybe fullbacks, kickers, and punters, right? So all positions created equal, though within that position group certainly could say, okay, if you're comparing 2 edge defenders, you want to value pass rushing over run defense a little bit more. So all positions created equal, give or take a couple little parts of that. Our top 2 players, Joey Bosa, Jalen Ramsey.
The only other caveat to all this is you need to be under 25 when opening day of the 2018 season. So
right.
There are guys not on this list who are not yet 25, but will be by the time the 2018 season rolls around. We
Trey Flowers,
dump those
Patriots.
guys out of the list. You guys don't count. You're gone. Other than that, if you're under 25, you're
Sorry,
eligible
Trey.
for this list. Joey Bosa, Jalen Ramsey, 1, 2. Those are the only 2 positions I think we agreed on in this entire list of 25.
Then
people.
all hell broke loose.
Yes. Then you wanted Myles Garrett, number 3.
So I think the debate here was, we actually sat there staring at each other in the office saying, who do we want at number 3? You didn't give any answers. I just threw some names out. I know you wanted Deon Jones high.
Yeah.
I thought there was a point where Tre'Davious White, cornerback from Buffalo, and Marshawn Lattimore, cornerback from the Saints, who, by the way, we had tied for 6th on this list, and we'll discuss how we struggled to separate those guys. There was a point where they were sitting there at number 3, and I brought up the point that Myles Garrett should be number 3, a guy that was number 1 on our draft board, graded at 88.4 last year, even though he missed some time last year, played, only 500-something snaps. But what we know about him, I'm pretty confident he's an 88 to 92 type of player in the PFF system every single year, and I'd be very happy to have him at number 3.
Yeah. Lunatic.
How's that?
Because the player that we ended up putting number 3 is Landon Collins, who a season ago had a Defensive Player of the Year kind of season, then backed it up with the kind of grade that Myles Garrett put up this year. Like his down year was Myles Garrett's season.
We could also say Landon Collins' rookie season was a 42.5.
That's because he was played out of position, deep off the line of scrimmage, way as a free safety. You moved him to strong safety. Suddenly he's a Defensive Player of the Year kind of candidate. He is awesome.
All right, don't make me speak ill of Landon Collins. I love Landon Collins.
I didn't. You just went to it.
No, I love Landon Collins. I love what he brings to the table when you talk about his ability to work downhill in the run game and what he does in the pass game and short area cover. I love it. I'm hoping that the Giants, they have a new defensive scheme. I do hope that they use him in a similar manner. The last 2 years where he played, that quarters type scheme where he's got to play a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage with run responsibility, but still, doesn't have to play that deep safety responsibility. Definitely plays to his skill set.
The Saints, by the way, had 3 players on this list. The 3 teams had 3 players on this list. The Saints, all 3 of them came from last year's draft class. And that's how good that draft class was.
They almost had 4. One of our guys that's in the future 10, so the next group of guys, and by the way, there was a lot of guys that we had to cut from this list.
Yeah.
There's a big list of guys who almost made it, some big names. But Marcus Williams saved that one play, was outstanding last year, and that was almost 4 players from the same draft class for the Saints. Alvin Kamara, Ryan Ramczyk, Marshawn Lattimore.
Yeah, that draft class, that's the kind of draft class that can make you a championship contender for, for half a decade without doing anything else.
Absolutely.
It's like the Seahawks when they had the Russell Wilson, Richard Sherman kind of drafts. That alone made them into Super Bowl contenders for a good few years because those guys are just premium positions for dirt cheap money.
Yeah, they got Sherman, Wilson, they got Bobby Wagner, all within 2 to 3 years.
The Saints had just had that kind of draft, and this is just the latest bit of evidence. All right, so Landon Collins went in at 3. What happened then?
So still more debate. DeForest Buckner at 4 on the interior D-line. I don't hate that. because, we do have to look at the here's where we debated, right? How much do we have to look at the college grades? And I feel much more confident looking at the college grades, especially on the defensive line, knowing what we know, the stuff that our guys have pulled out about how predictive our college stuff is, and Bose is a part of that, up at number one. The fact that he's been outstanding in the NFL, you can also push back to college and say, okay, that translated extremely well. That was my argument for Myles Garrett, because he was up in that Bosa range from a grading standpoint, plus has all the measurables and athleticism. So I feel confident about those college grades translating. That's why I wanted Garrett higher. But you could say the same thing about Tre'Davious White and Marshawn Lattimore. You could say the same thing about DeForest Buckner. All of those guys crushed our system in college. And when guys like Tre'Davious White and Marshawn Lattimore only have 1 year of NFL success, even though they both graded at 90+, you can also look back to college and say, all right, we feel pretty good about these guys continuing, because Tre'Davious White had our highest coverage grade in that draft class, and Marshawn Lattimore was right there with him. So that's why those guys were tied for 6th, and that's why Buckner, I think, is at 4, 90.4 overall grade last year, plus excellent college production.
Yeah, Tre'Davious White was a top 15 player on our big board last season. He was a dominant college player as well. I'm fine with using college as this validation for NFL grading as another reason, like a sort of an added bonus. You've got a guy who has got a really good NFL grade. He also had a really good college grades that we're pretty certain now this guy's dominant. My thing is, though, if you've got a guy who has really strong NFL grades, didn't grade particularly well in college, I'm not going to use that as a reason he shouldn't be higher on a list. So, I mean, Deon Jones is a pretty good example, actually, though we weren't using it at the time. Deon Jones has been fantastic in the NFL.
Oh, yeah. He's
one
great.
Of those guys who we missed on as a college prospect, didn't have great college grading, at least overall, even though you could see it flash in certain plays. Deon Jones, you wouldn't hold him down this list because he didn't grade well in college, because we've seen that he's a different guy.
No, he was a special linebacker last year, so he comes in at number 5. NFL's all about coverage, and he was the best coverage linebacker in the NFL last season. Let's touch on Tre'Davious White and Marshawn Lattimore again quickly. We decided to call them tied for 6th because we had a lot of internal debate. White played in more of a zone-heavy scheme, which is not – it's not a negative, but it's a little bit less challenging, I'd say, than what Lattimore had to do down the stretch, trying to cover Julio Jones one-on-one and, having to match up against top receivers down the stretch. And that's going to be must-see TV for the next few years. Marshawn Lattimore against Julio Jones. Lattimore was outstanding last year, as was Tre'Davious White. It's not like White had it completely easy. I mean, he covered Gronk one-on-one, picked off Brady on a pass to Gronk and all that stuff. So they're just both great players, had the college grades, had the NFL grades. White edged out Lattimore a little bit in the NFL grades, so we ended up tying
He covered
up for 6th.
Gronk one-on-one at 5'11" and 190 pounds.
Yeah, I know. It's awesome.
That's ridiculous.
Oh, he's really good, man.
Gronk
he's
is
really good.
many, many inches and many, many pounds bigger than that.
White's excellent. And, coming out, we said outside, inside, move him around a little bit, even though the Bills don't necessarily do that a ton. Zone, man, he could do it all, and he was outstanding as a rookie. So we had White and Lattimore tied for 6th.
Marshawn Lattimore did not allow a touchdown in his entire rookie season, had 5 picks, 10 pass breakups, allowed a passer rating of 45 when he was targeted. That's pretty ridiculous for a rookie. Tre'Davious White had a better completion percentage allowed than Lattimore, only 50.6% of the passes thrown his way were caught. Did give up 3 touchdowns, had 4 interceptions, 11 pass breakups. Because of those touchdowns, a higher passer rating allowed when targeted, 68.2. But those two guys both had absolutely outstanding grades as rookies.
All right, we said we weren't necessarily going to go through each player. So Myles Garrett at 8, we talked about him a little bit. He was very productive as a pass rusher, 7 sacks, 11 QB hits, 19 hurries, limited time, ready for him to take the next step next year. I think the next big debate for us was the running backs.
The running back chaos.
So we all had different lists. The 4 guys that made it among running backs, we had Ezekiel Elliott at 9, Alvin Kamara at 10. We split the running backs with Mike Evans at 11, wide receiver, of course. Todd Gurley comes in at 12, and then Kareem Hunt at 13. Those running backs, the 4 of them, Elliott, Kamara, Evans, and Gurley, I think we had them reshuffled every which way at some point before settling on this list.
It's such a hard list. Those guys all essentially graded in or have peak grades in the same kind of ballpark, right? High 80s, low 90s, they're all in the same place. A a couple of them. So you've got obviously 2 rookies, Kamara and Hunt, who don't have another season to look at. Then the other 2 guys, you've got Ezekiel Elliott, who is coming off a worse season than his rookie season, albeit still pretty good. And then you've got Todd Gurley, who last season, buried in the Jeff Fisher era with the Rams, was terrible. Like he looked done. I mean, when you were watching his tape, he was starting to see stuff that wasn't happening. His vision looked like it had abandoned him. We were talking in this offseason about what happens if Todd Gurley has been broken the same way Trent Richardson got broken, the same way quarterbacks get broken by bad offensive line play. He's now seeing shadows, and he's just not playing the way you expect. He comes back and has an MVP candidate kind of season, was one of the best receiving backs in the game. I think the highest grade we've seen from any of these guys that single season was Gurley. Almost all of it is because of his work as a receiver. But you've got 4 completely different backs. The grading is all the same, but each one of them has, some kind of negative attached to his 4 seasons. Even if that negative is we've only seen him for 1 season, as it is with the 2 rookies.
I made the point during the draft process that if Saquon Barkley's first few years in the league looked like Todd Gurley's from a production or a grade standpoint, I wouldn't be that surprised.
Yeah.
And let's look at those real quick. Gurley, 80.4 as a rookie. I think he was okay, and then he had a bunch of big runs that made his numbers look pretty good, which is fine. I mean, that's part of his skill set, right? The big playability. 2016, though, a 50.7 grade. And you just kept saying, I know, Jeff Fisher era. But at the same time, he did look, vision wasn't good, and the O-line was bad, but even when there was something there, he wasn't taking the 3 or 4 yards. And then last year a 92 and almost winning MVP. I could see that type of, maybe not that extreme for Barkley, but you talk about Gurley last year, better O-line, better scheme from a run standpoint, and using him in the pass game. When all those things came together, you saw that 92 player. I feel like Barkley might need that ecosystem around him to get the best out of him. And if you do have to depend on him behind a bad offensive line, you might see some of those bad seasons when it comes to straight rushing yards and even grade.
Well, Gurley and Kamara are 2 interesting players to look at for Barkley, because those are 2 guys who were both at their best as receivers, and Barkley is going to have to be at his best as a receiver because he just isn't a great in-between-the-tackles ball carrier, right? Because he always looks for the daylight. Now, that becomes a lot less of a problem if you're giving him a huge amount of space inside, because you're reducing the number of plays where he wants to bounce it outside if you actually give him quality running lanes up the middle. But it's going to be an issue, and if your offensive line isn't great, he needs to be a fantastic receiver. Otherwise, you're not going to have this great player.
So I think the Cliff Notes version on these 4 running backs for me, Zeke Elliott, outstanding as a rookie, took a bit of a step back last year, as did the offensive line. But we're talking about a 3-down running back who can do it all, and I think that kind of gives him the nod. Alvin Kamara, unbelievable last year. Usage pattern, as you said, was just incredible. He used him all over the place. You got Drew Brees throwing you the ball, but at the same time, he was splitting time with Mark Ingram, and it's a little bit easier to put that, to really put those crazy numbers on the ground up there rather than some of these workhorse
Can he do it again, and can he do it with another 100 touches?
Right, exactly. So that's the question mark there. And then we put Todd Gurley, because of those couple years where we did see Todd Gurley not able to elevate his game around lesser talent. I think it kind of held that against him, but also gave him credit. He was awesome last year. And then Kareem Hunt, a step behind him, where, maybe he's just not as dynamic as some of those other guys. We love Hunt, but just a step below those other guys. But like I said, I could see all of those guys pretty much interchange.
And again, he has the same issue as Kamara of, can he back up that fantastic rookie season? Because we've already seen that with a guy like Zeke Elliott, who did take that step back. So we'll see from Kareem Hunt as well. But those 4 guys were really tough to split.
Let's talk about the Chiefs now, since we're talking about Hunt. He was at 13. The Chiefs were one of the teams that had 3 players on the list. At number 14, Hunt's teammate, Chris Jones, interior defensive lineman. You talk about the college validation. He was a guy that we had as a top 15 player on our board. He had 2 outstanding years of production at Mississippi State, 84.4 grade as a rookie, solid. Took that to the next level, 88.2 last year, one of the better interior disruptors that have entered the league over the last couple of years. And then Tyreke Hill, we had a tough time slotting him too. We put him at 18 because he is just such a good playmaker. I mean, you talk about there have been fast guys that you just put out at wide receiver and say, hey, run deep, but he truly is at a different level. I mean, he creates insane separation. He became more than just a gimmick player last year. He became a legitimate deep threat and had to put him on the list. So that's 3 Chiefs right there.
Yeah, so they were the second team with 3 guys on this list. The Saints were the first. The other team with 3 players on this list were the Tennessee Titans.
I think they're going to be the darlings of the offseason. You know how the Bucs every year, it's like, this is the year for the Bucs? That's going to be the Titans this year.
So the 3 Titans, none of whom we've actually got to yet, obviously. Jack Conklin, number 19, tackle, who backed up a fantastic rookie season with a pretty good second season. Marcus Mariota is still under 25, despite a couple of years in the league.
Matthew Stafford as well, right?
No.
Oh.
No, it turns out he's actually 30.
Oh, I thought he was 25 for a long time.
He was, yeah, about a year.
And
then now he's not anymore.
He was under 25 for a while.
Yes, about 25 years.
Oh. You're good at math.
Thanks. Kevin Byard is the 3rd Tennessee Titan.
Byard?
Yeah, Byard. Kevin Byard.
Thank you for being American.
You're welcome.
You're getting better.
Kevin Byard, fantastic last year. Led the league in interceptions for almost all the season. He was leading the league for most of the year. Slipped behind, was it Darius Slay, and then got 2 in the final game of the season to get back up there. But even beyond the interceptions, he had an absolute ton of pass breakups as well. As a free safety, it's not often you see that. He had 7 pass breakups as well.
Should we send this list to Deon?
Yeah. The thing about Byard, though, is he was so good that when the Titans played the Patriots, somebody was going to have to draw the Gronk assignment because that's job one when it comes to defending the Patriots. And even though the Titans defense basically didn't have anyone that could do it, it was, okay, nobody in this room is going to be able to do this, but you are the most likely to be able to do it. So Kevin Byard drew the Rob Gronkowski assignment, and it didn't go great, but I think it speaks positively to him that he was the guy from that defense that was at least given the assignment.
Yeah, that's not really his skill set.
No, he's a free safety, and he got put in man coverage against the best tight end in the game.
He's matched up with our scouting report really well, too, because we had not found – we were a couple of years into our college data. We hadn't found a whole lot of free safeties, true free safeties coming out of college. We highlighted him as maybe the best free safety in that 2016 draft, and so far looking really good. I mean, he showed us speed against Alabama when he was at Middle Tennessee State that really stood out, and you just see that play speed. Yeah, gave up 5 catches, touchdown, 48 yards, 129.8 passer rating against the Patriots in a role that he's not used to necessarily playing.
So we've skipped a couple of veteran players to get this far down the list, but Stefon Diggs from Minnesota and Leonard Williams from the New York Jets are both in there, 15 and 16. Diggs is one of these guys who is just really stupid good.
He really is.
He reminds me a lot of Antonio Brown. He's not quite as good as Antonio Brown, but if you took Antonio Brown's sort of attributes across the board and put 90% to them, I think you'd get Stefon Diggs.
This feels like one of those things we were critical of, like traditional scouting reports every now and again, because I used to joke like you could have the same write-up for Aaron Donald as you have with Geno Atkins, as you have with Gerald McCoy. It's like they're explosive, they're this, they're that. It's the same descriptions, but the how often component is important. Aaron Donald has done it more often than all those guys. You could probably have the same description of Diggs and Antonio Brown, right?
Their scouting reports will probably be identical.
But how often is more important, because Antonio Brown just does it more often. But you talk about Diggs, slick route runner. Yep. I mean, he is just shifty in and out of cuts. And then the contested catch thing last year that we kept highlighting on this podcast over and over, him and Adam Thielen being top 5 type of guys in contested catch situations, that's Antonio Brown-ish too. You've got a small Antonio Brown who's a great route runner and great in contested situations. So I don't mind that comparison as long as it's, Antonio Brown light.
I think Brown is a little bit better after the catch than Diggs is, but I think Diggs is probably a little bit better in contested catch situations. So it evens out. But yeah, Brown is just 10% better across the board, but that's still a pretty nice place to be.
Leonard Williams, you mentioned, pretty consistent across the board, mid-80s type of grades in 3 straight years, just a solid overall player. So when he was coming out, I comped him to Ty Warren out of the Patriots. From the Patriots a few years back. Okay. Just a really good run defender who's going to have some years as a solid pass rusher. I think that's been a pretty fair comp for Leonard Williams so far coming out.
I think anybody that's you're expecting to be a really good player in today's NFL is always going to look like a better pass rusher than Ty Warren. Like, those players don't really exist anymore. The two-gap defensive ends just there to occupy space.
Williams, another guy, would have been even more of a stud maybe 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Yannick Ngakoue makes the list. And another guy that I think we nailed the scouting report on as far as the split in his run defense versus his pass rushing. But again, pass-first league, it's all about rushing the passer, and Ngakoue can get after the quarterback.
Yeah, and he's one of these players where it kind of looks like PFF was late on it, because we're saying he had this fantastic breakout season this past year with the 13 sacks, but the season before he had 8 sacks, so everybody already thought he was fantastic, but he actually had a pretty abysmal grade that year. Did get some pressure, but not nearly enough given how often he was rushing the passer and what he did to generate that pressure. So his overall PFF grade last season was 43.0, which is pretty miserable. This season it jumped all the way to 83.6. His pass rushing grade this season was fantastic. The run defense was still pretty absent. And actually run defense was by far the biggest part of his negative grade last season. But he improved a bit in run defense and improved dramatically as a pass rusher. And so his grade jumps through the roof, but it's one of those funny things where we kind of look late to the party, because the grading was saying he wasn't as good last season than the numbers were.
College pass rush grades were good.
Yeah.
They were very good. Did struggle against the run. I think at the time we were putting our draft board together for his draft, the 2016 draft. We were definitely focused more on the run for everybody than we should have.
Yeah, I don't think he's ever
adjusted since then.
I don't think he's ever going to be a good run defender,
and that's okay.
And we're reaching now the point where we care less and less about that.
And that's why he's on the list. The other fun little debate that we had, we put them back to back for a reason: Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota. So remember, all positions created equal for this study, or else they'd be sitting near the top. Jameis Winston comes in at 20. Marcus Mariota comes in at 21.
Yeah.
What?
You put Jameis Winston above Marcus Mariota again.
Yes.
Despite the fact that Mariota was better last year.
Correct, because
you think
there were other years involved.
You think
in this evaluation,
and will always think that Jameis Winston is one season away from the breakout Cam Newton MVP kind of year.
Yeah.
Where he eliminates all the bad and all you get is good Jameis.
No, even the bad can be high. The bad can remain high. Even with Newton, the bad remained somewhat high in his MVP season. The positive, though, just using our analytics and the PFF grading system and knowing how much the positively graded throws can fluctuate, the positively graded throws could go through the roof for Jameis Winston, because he's capable of all of them. He's got some playmakers around him. One of these years, he is going to grade it like 89, be a top 5 type of quarterback in the NFL.
It is never going to happen.
He's got 3 years in the league. He's still young. He's
Just
still
saying,
under 25.
When they came out, Marcus Mariota was a better quarterback, and he's still a better quarterback.
We have 3 years of grading. Winston has outgraded him 2 out of those 3 years. And last year was a small difference. And last year, interestingly enough, Mariota's worst year statistically, but his highest PFF grade.
Yeah.
But he also did it all off of play action, Sam. That is not sustainable. He was one of the worst in the NFL statistically on non-play action situations, our most stable situations.
Even if this wasn't a clear win in Marcus Mariota's favor, anytime you have a quarterback that says he's going to eat a W and starts miming that out to people like he's on drugs.
You're right. Hold on.
That should immediately drop him down the list. In fact, they should drop him off the list.
Your Honor, new evidence has been brought to the table, and I will now take Jameis Winston off the list. Excellent. You are absolutely right. That was pretty bad.
Good.
Let me tell you this, though. We've got 5 years of grading now of Winston and Mariota.
Yeah.
2013, I went back and did them by hand because we don't have it yet. Winston was unbelievable. So we have Winston over Mariota in 2013 in college.
Allegedly. Did anybody check
as a
your
redshirt
work?
Freshman? He won the Heisman that year, and the grading backed it up. 2014, their last years in college, it was Mariota over Winston by a pretty significant margin. Winston was not nearly as good in his draft year. Their rookie and second seasons, though, Winston graded 80.6 and 80, which was better than Mariota's 74 and 75. And then last year is Mariota over Winston. So in 5 years of grading so far, we have Winston 3, Mariota 2.
Okay.
Yeah. How
Sure.
about that?
There's also a supporting cast element to that. The Titans rolled into one season thinking Tajay Sharp was going to be their number 1 wide receiver.
Oh, I know. Look, I'm ready for Mariota with, the Corey Davis has to get to 1,000 receptions.
He does,
So he'll probably grab 200 of those next year.
Definitely.
So I'm waiting for that pairing to just, I'm waiting for that big Mariota breakout season.
We skipped somebody to get down here. Who do we skip on this list to get this far? Oh, Ryan Ramczyk, 23 for the Saints. He's the 3rd Saint on the list. Final 2 guys on this list. Hunter Henry, Los Angeles Chargers. Very nearly San Diego them again. Los Angeles Chargers, thanks. Really good grade last year. He's a guy who we may be ahead of this one on the basis that his grading has been insane, but his production isn't quite there yet because he's still been splitting time with Antonio Gates in that offense. Gates not there right now. This could be the season where he's given every single one of those tight end targets, and suddenly you get this explosion of production for a guy who has been ridiculously good.
Big fan of Harry. I mean, they should have been feeding him the ball more often. I
And
said
then
that after his rookie season.
The last guy on this list is one of these ones who I think people may be shocked is still under 25.
Ronald Darby.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had to go back and double check that one. But Darby, he has a poor 2016 grade. He's been banged up a lot over the last couple of years, but 85 as a rookie, 84.2 last year when he's on the field. Excellent player.
Yeah.
A lot of guys just missed.
What about this list of guys just missed? Let's wrap it up with this. Give us a couple of names that you think are going to make this list in the future.
Well, let me explain the quarterbacks again because the value thing's a big thing. And we have Jared Goff, who only has the 1 good year. I expect Goff to be on here in the future. By the way, Carson Wentz just turned 25, so he's not available. Deshaun Watson, people are waiting for Deshaun Watson. When other people are putting these lists up, Deshaun Watson's like top 5, top 3, maybe the top 1. We still have to wait and see a little bit. There's a lot of numbers that we have that say that 103 or so passer rating, whatever he had last year, was very inflated. I'm a big Deshaun Watson fan, but I'm not ready to put him at that level yet.
There's a lot of data saying the numbers are inflated, plus we're still dealing with an insanely small sample size. So let's just take it easy with Deshaun Watson. He may be fantastic, but we'll just be a little bit cautious until we see it.
Big fan of Watson overall and big fan of Patrick Mahomes.
Having said there's some data to suggest we should be cautious with Deshaun Watson, you wanted to pump Patrick Mahomes like all the way up this list.
Well, this is where we debated the college stuff. I saw a 90 college grade.
62 snaps.
And look, the more you watch Mahomes, even in the preseason in that one start against Denver, you do see the natural playmaking ability. I think Mahomes has a chance to be a star.
I like Mahomes. I'm just that's another case where I think, let's pump the brakes a little bit.
Highlight some names okay, let me just highlight one more name and I'll let you go. Kenny Clark out of the Packers interior defensive line. They're building an excellent defensive line there in Green Bay. He was an 87.9 last year very quietly.
So one for you, Dalvin Cook,
who
could easily be along with those other 4 running backs had he played all his rookie season.
I was ready to put Dalvin in the top 15.
Dalvin Cook is fantastic. One name that isn't even on this giant list of people who should feature in the future that I'm still not writing off yet is Christian McCaffrey. I loved McCaffrey more than any running back that we've seen come into the NFL in the last few seasons.
Why don't we have McCaffrey here?
Because he wasn't that good last year because that offense was pretty ugly. But McCaffrey can still be legit. Because we're not finished writing off our guys yet, let's go for Derek Barnett. Pretty good as a rookie in that insanely deep defensive rotation for Philadelphia. Let's see year 2. He didn't have. Really, the only thing that separated him from Myles Garrett is that he wasn't freaky athlete Myles Garrett. He was, a reasonable athlete who was insanely productive.
Right.
Myles Garrett just had this advantage over him because he's already a freaky athlete. So even if the sort of technique and refinement needed some work, he would be able to beat people just by being insanely athletic. Barnett will get there, but I think it may take him, that first year to learn.
Well, that's a good case study, though, pairing our grades and production with the athleticism of these guys. We forgot to mention Mitch Trubisky with those quarterbacks as well.
With all your quarterbacks.
I mean, he was solid as a rookie, too, in a not great situation. We think he's got a better situation, too. He's ready to have a breakout. I'm not surprised if he's on the list a year from now. Mm-hmm. Miles Jack, Jordan Lewis, a guy that graded extremely well in college, graded well in his limited time, cornerback for the Cowboys.
Buda Baker. Good enough that they dumped Tyrann Mathieu.
And Jamal Adams, safety, a guy that we had as a top 10 player on our board, top 10 pick last year. There's a lot of pretty good young talent in the NFL. This was a difficult list to make.
It was.
Yeah, Kendall Fuller, too. He only had 1 year wonder, 90 overall last year. That was the reason we kept him.
And because he's now essentially changing position. He was a slot guy in Washington. Now he's going to be the number one corner playing outside for the Chiefs. That's going to be tough.
Speaking of slots, the one other guy, Desmond King, cornerback from the Chargers, multiple years of good college grading, 86.5 last year as a rookie, 5th-round pick, another guy that just really productive every time he's been on a football field in our world.
Yeah.
All right, guys, that'll do it. That's our top 25 under 25. Go check out the article at profootballfocus.com. Stick with us this entire offseason. Go check out the YouTube channel, guys. We're doing stuff every day. New video or two showing up every single day. Go to find Pro Football Focus on YouTube. And, of course, go get PFF Edge and Elite. You guys will not be sorry if you guys are getting Elite or you have Elite when you see Premium Stats 2, Sam. We keep seeing previews every week over here in the office. I cannot wait to unveil Premium Stats 2 because it's going to be a game changer in the football industry.
It's pretty. It does a lot of cool stuff. It's going to be fun.
That's everything you need. All right, guys. Thank you for listening, and we'll chat again next week.